All right, guys, we are back with even more for loop practice. So, for loops have so many capabilities and and so much usage. We actually need to really focus in on them. So, what I want to talk about today is how to take your for loops and start using other things within them. So, one thing that we can do is we can set up our minimum and maximum amounts ahead of time. So if you've already watched the CodeHS video, you kind of got an idea on this. So in a for loop, you declare a variable like I and you set it to something. In this case, I'm going to do 0. And then you do a test expression where I is set to however many times you want to run it. And then you increment it. So it would look something like this. Now, these are raw numbers, or as CodeHS calls them, magic numbers. Now, if I were to write a really, really long program that was using a for loop maybe 5 or 6 times or had over 300 lines, if I ever changed the number of times that I wanted my for loop to run, it would be a real pain to change because I'd have to go back and change them constantly. So what I can do is I can create some variable constants up here, like a minimum number, which I can set to 0, and a maximum number that I can set to 8. Now, instead of using these magic numbers of 0 and 8, I can call my variable min and my variable max. Okay, so let's just say I wanted to print a message really fast here. I'm just going to print hello. Oh, don't forget your quotation marks. Hello. And don't forget to close your curly braces. Now, with the way that I have it run right now, the word hello will print 8 times. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, let's say I wanted to change my maximum value. I want it to print 12 times. Rather than changing anything in my for loop, I'm just going to come right up here to the top and change my max value. And now, hello will print 12 times. If I want my minimum to start at the number 1 instead of 0, instead of changing it down here in my for loop, I can just change it here. So you can create variable constants to use inside of your for loops so that you're not having to retype those numbers multiple times and so that they're easier to change later on. Okay. Now, as I mentioned in our earlier video, we can work with math expressions inside of for loops. So if I wanted to maybe add the numbers from 1 to 12 inside of my loop, instead of just printing the word hello, here's how you would do it. First off, before you create your loop, you're going to need one more variable. Now, this variable has a special name. It's called an accumulator variable. Basically, it's like a sum. It keeps track of how much you actually have in it. So we're going to set our sum initially to 0 because it doesn't equal anything. We're just going to be adding numbers in. And then down here, I want to keep track. So I'm going to do sum equals, and then the sum plus my index variable or my counter variable. So if I run this, it's going to start at 1, and it's going to do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 all the way up to 12. And it doesn't print anything because I didn't tell it to. Now sum is holding a number. If I come down here and go print line and call sum, it should now give me the answer to my math question, which is 66. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 12, where it's adding onto itself, will add up to 66. Now, I could also do that where I multiply like that. It just gives me 0 because sum is set to 0 and anything times 0 isn't going to work. So if I'm starting there, I might want to start at 1. There we go. Now it's working. So it multiplied the number times itself all the way through 12. So just be aware, 0, anytime you multiply by 0, it's just going to save 0. So don't make that mistake. So all you're learning here is that you can, number 1, create constant variables to store inside of your for loop so you don't have to change anything. Second, you can create accumulator variables to hold numbers and then do repeated mathematical practices on those numbers inside of that for loop. And just be aware, anytime you make a variable like sum, make sure you make it outside. Because if I were to accidentally set this inside, it would not give me the right number. It would only give me 11 because it is set to 1 every single time. So it resets the number each time. So make sure you don't do that. Same thing for the print. If you put the print inside of your problem here, it's going to print every single time. Now, sometimes you want that. Sometimes you don't. It really kind of depends on the outcome that you are looking for. So again, for loops repeats a specific number of times, and then you have some extra capabilities this time.